Hi there, my name is Martin Stone from Switch On Health, the college that believes everyone has the right to a happier and healthier life. Thank you for tuning in to this free presentation tonight on food combining for plant-based meals, healthy food combining for plant-based meals, I should say. Now, this session is being run free as a part of ATMS Natural Medicine Week 2022. So if you're watching this live, thank you so much for coming and showing your support. We've got a lot of great events happening this week as part of Natural Medicine Week. And as you all know, we need natural medicine more than ever. Now, this session is being run live. It is free. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube and you'd like to ask us any questions, you're more than welcome to. We'd love to hear from you. Just pop your questions down into the chat box below and we'll get back to you. We promise you that. Okay, so tonight's presenter is naturopath and homeopath Sally Maizey. I've worked with Sally for many, many years. She's a wealth of knowledge and she always manages to surprise me and teach me something that I don't know. So I'm going to shut up and hand over to the real expert. Sally, over to you.
Thanks, Martin. Well, that'll be interesting to see if I can teach you something again tonight. Let's see what it can be. I'm actually going to switch my camera off so that everybody can just see the slides. You don't need to be seeing me at the same time. Just hold on 1 second. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is plant-based food combining. As we would know, this planet is not doing too well based on climate change, etc., etc. And so therefore we have to potentially reduce how we are consuming. And some of that consumption means reducing some of the animal products that we might be consuming as well. And if we think back to, you know, our parents' time and all of that, and my grandparents' time, the majority of the food that they ate was pretty much sort of fresh food, especially my grandparents. And in saying that, you know, if I think about someone like David Attenborough, he also encourages plant-based food combining. So let's get into it because there's a lot of information that I'm going to give you tonight, and it's all in the slides, which Martin's already sent you. And then you have access to a copy of this recording so that you can, you know, write down some more information as well. So let's move on, hopefully. Hold on a moment. There we go. So, you know, heart health. It's all good. Fruit and veg, good for your heart, as you already know. So there are different types of vegetarians. The most extreme, as most of us would know, well, not extreme, but a vegan, no animal products, no animal byproducts as well. So that means clothing, they don't have furnishings, hides, etc. So no white, red meat, so no fish, no fowl. They also don't do honey products, so no honey, no beeswax, no gelatin, because most gelatin is made from animal products or animal materials. So that is a vegan. We will discuss that in somewhat depth tonight because it's important that vegans get as much nutrition as, say, an omnivore would, okay? And some of the biggest players that they lack we'll go through. A lactitarian, they are predominantly plant-based, but include dairy. Your ovotarian, similar, predominantly plant-based, but they include eggs. Lacto-ovo, now this is the most common of all our tarians today, and they are vegetarians that include dairy and eggs. We've got fruitarians. A famous fruitarian is the trumpeter James Morrison, who's an Australian trumpeter, jazz musician. He's a fruitarian. There are also semi-vegetarians or flexitarians. And this is what most people are trying to be, where the majority of their diet is plant-based. But they're technically not called vegetarians because there's still some incorporation of meat. We then have the pescetarian. Now they include fruit and vegetables as well as fish and seafood. And then there is a polotarian. So again, fruit and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and fowl. All right. So they're your main types of eaters. There's obviously also the omnivore, who is predominantly meat and vegetables, but predominantly sometimes meat, and they're the carnivores. But let's move on. Delicious, vegan, yes, we like it. Excuse me. We need to look at the macronutrients first. And the reason why we need to look at macronutrients, because these are your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. Now, your proteins, as it says there, around about 60 to 80 grams per day, and that depends on your age and your gender. But if I put that example there, you've got some puy lentils, which are the lovely tiny little, I think they're French lentils, some brown rice and some avocado. 100 grams of each of those products gives you 34 grams of protein. Now that's around about half the protein for most people for the day, and that's just in one meal. We then look at carbs. Now your carbs tell you exactly what energy you're going to get. Sorry, your amino acids also give you that sort of a breakdown of the protein. That's how it's broken down. Your carbs, how we get our energy. So average kilojoules per day, average is around about 8,700. Fiber, though, which we get from our complex carbohydrates rather than refined carbohydrates, is 25 to 30 grams. You can see there that I've given the same example as above with the lentils, the fiber, the rice and the fiber, the avocado and the fiber, and you can see how much you get per day. So that meal in itself is giving you about, if you look at it, around about a quarter, maybe a little bit more of your energy that you require throughout the day, and certainly getting you up there in how much fiber you require. Now, the biggest thing we need for fiber is to make sure that we have enough water, but we need fiber to have good gut health. We really do, so that our stools are healthy, that our bowel movements are well. And then we look at our healthy fats. Now, when we talk about healthy fats, we're talking more about the unsaturated fats, your mono and your polyunsaturated fats. And you can see there that you can get it in avocados, nuts, seeds, dark chocolate, extra virgin olive oil. And some of the bigger players these days, hemp, flax seeds, been around for ages, but chia seeds and hemp seeds are now becoming a bit of a fashion. The hemp seeds, I've probably been taking for 20 years. I used to buy them when they were only given as a pet food product, but I still had hemp seeds. You can, again, there's that example, the lentils, the rice and the avocado, and you're getting about 16 grams worth of fat. So you're probably getting a little bit too much fat in that little meal. So you might want to reduce some of your avocado, but that gives you an overall picture of how much macronutrients you need. And the biggest problem with vegans is that they don't get enough protein. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more depth. And what they then tend to do, which you'll see in a slide later on, they'll eat more complex carbs, thinking that the reason why they're tired is because they don't have enough energy. The reason why they're tired is because they don't have enough amino acids, potentially. We look at some of the micronutrients that might be lacking in a vegan diet. And the first one would be iron. Again, any fatigue, I tend to think of iron. I tend to think of amino acids. I tend to think of, even CoQ10, depending on what's going on in the body. Fatigue is one of the biggest symptoms. I have so many people that ring me up and go, I'm tired, and I'm tired all the time. So iron is a big player there. Helps with oxygen transport and helps with red blood cell production. Now, with your iron, you can see there's plenty of foods. Cruciferous foods are your broccolis, your collies, your cabbages, your magnificent little Brussels sprout, one of the most loveliest vegetables in the world, legumes, nuts, seeds. Now, you can get iron also from cast iron pots. So any of you that have your camp pots that are cast iron, you can use them in the kitchen. And you'll get, especially if you're a vegan, you'll get some of your iron requirements when you're cooking with cast iron pots. Blackstrap molasses, a great one for iron, nutritional yeast or brewer's yeast, and then nettle tea, all really good iron, high, rich products full of iron. And they're ones that you can certainly look at if you are experiencing problems with your fatigue. It'd be one of the first ones I'd look at along with protein. We then look at calcium and magnesium. Now, the reason why I've put these together is you need to have your calcium within the same ratio. Sorry, not within the same ratio. It's in a ratio of 2 to 1. So 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. And generally, when there's not enough calcium, there's also not enough magnesium. And when you think about, just a little sideline here, with a red blood cell, the main component in a red blood cell is iron. With a plant cell, which is similar to their blood cell, with a plant cell, the main component in that cell is magnesium. So that's why, that's why everybody says green leafy vegetables are great. Well, here you go, your bok choy, your kale, your mustard greens. Calcium set tofu, haven't had it myself, like tofu, but haven't had the calcium set one. Not sure if it tastes any different. Somebody might be able to tell me that. Your fortified plant milks and sesame seeds. It's amazing how much you'll get out of some tahini. Just a small amount of tahini will give you a large amount of calcium for the day. And as you can see there, your calcium's for your bones, your teeth, and your mental health. Zinc, another player, because we think of zinc, most people think of seafood, but whole grains, wheat germ, tofu, tempeh. There's a couple of things there that you need to know, though, with zinc, is that soaking your nuts and your seeds and your legumes is really good, or sprouting some of these whole grains as well, or having fermented food. By doing that, soaking and sprouting and fermenting, you can actually help to absorb your nutrients even more. And that is the case for zinc. And zinc, especially in this time we find ourselves in with COVID, is a primary player, absolute primary player for immune health and cell repair. So it's really important that you let your clients know, or that you yourself know, that zinc is very, very important for immune health. There's certainly other players, but zinc's one of the primary ones. Iodine is another one that's often left out of vegetarian and vegan foods, but vegetables that grow near the ocean, because they seem to get the sea spray upon them, could be good. And then iodized salt, certainly seaweed, and iodine, great for thyroid health. And as you would know, there's quite a few people out there, especially women, that start this plant-based sort of regime and then forget that they still need to have those RDIs, those recommended daily intakes of the macro and micronutrients to be in optimal health, really. Moving on, just a few of the vitamins, water-soluble vitamins. B12 is one of the biggest players. Now, it's interesting that it says unwashed organic produce. If it's organic, yes, there's going to be a bit of dirt, a bit of grit, but, there shouldn't be any toxins on it. There shouldn't be any chemicals, but we'll go through that a little bit later. Mushrooms, nori, so your seaweed again, spirulina, plant, chlorella, nutritional yeast, blackstrap molasses. Now, just remember that blackstrap molasses is one of the biggest players. Martin, can you still hear me? Because it just said my connection was soft.
Yes, Sal, thanks. We can
Beautiful.
hear you.
Thank
it's
you.
a little bit crackly, but keep going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And fortified plants. So, you'll see it. It'll be on your labelling. This is why we're doing a labelling talk on Thursday as well, to coincide with this, because your fortified plants, you need to know what's in your products. So your B12, the importance of B12 in the diet is that it helps with protein metabolism. Now, if you're not getting your proteins broken down properly by the B, which B12 helps with that, then you're not getting your protein, so you're not getting those amino acids. And we're going to go through the amino acids, because I personally think that the amino acids are primary to, in particular, mental health. Yeah, but we'll talk about that a little later. And you can see that B12 also helps with red blood cell formation. Your fat solubles, vitamin D. Well, okay, so we all know about vitamin D. Biggest place that we can get our vitamin D from is the sun. Now, it's a little bit difficult for some people. So some vegans, depending on, you know, their culture and their religious status as well, getting out in the sun is not a possibility, especially for Muslim women. It has been, studies have been done that they are suffering from low vitamin D. Now, it's really important to get your vitamin D, and the fortified foods would be the most opportune way if you are not eating any meat. Otherwise, sunlight through unwashed skin, purely because it's a fat soluble vitamin, so it needs the good fats or the good oils on the skin in order for it to absorb correctly. In the heat of the day, 10 to 15 minutes, no more, as much of your body that you can get out in the sun as possible, and no sunscreen. Now, you might have also seen that there's a big thing about sunscreens at the moment. Some of them are actually being recalled because they have been linked to being carcinogenic. Sunscreen that I've got, just in brackets there as a side note, I use one called What Not. Now, vitamin D, vital for bone health, because it helps calcium and phosphorus for absorption. So they're some of the main nutrients that are missing in a vegan diet. Some of the main ones that we really need to, as practitioners or even as plant-based consumers, need to be very aware of, because they are big players in terms of the signs and symptoms that you would see with deficiencies. And again, one of the biggest ones is fatigue. I've put two websites there. One is called Nutrient Reference Values. That tells you how much you need per day. And then the Food Standards Australia, the link that I've given you there takes you to a database where you can actually key in a food, and it'll give you all the nutrients that you get from that food for around about 100 grams of that substance. So two really good, credible resources for you. Now, the consequences of a vegan diet, if they're not getting enough protein, and there's a decreased sort of protein, is that they'll eat more complex carbohydrates, as I said before, believing that that's going to give them more energy. Now, it's not going to give them more energy. If anything, it's going to make them hyperglycemic. So it may actually increase their blood glucose levels, and it may even make them quite tired after eating. Now, if you're a vegan and you find that you are getting quite tired after eating, you might want to look at the fact that you might not be getting enough protein. And that can be dire, absolute dire, for all sorts of reasons. And we're going to go through some of them soon. Fabulous tacos, beans, everything you need. All right, so we're going to move on to the, excuse me, the amino acids. Now, we're going to look at that may be required. They wouldn't normally be essential, but may be required if your lifestyle is such that there is a higher demand. So you can see that I've put here, you know, the amino acids, and we're not going to go through all the details here. You can read this at your leisure, but I'm just going to point out a few things. So first of all, a lot of people, there's a bit of a, controversy over whether histidine is actually, an essential amino acid. It is for infants. It most certainly is for infants. It's not so much for adults. It's more if the adults need a demand for it. So here you can see bananas, legumes, wheat germ. Now there is a demand if there's if the person that you're talking with drinks alcohol. And it may not necessarily be a small amount of alcohol. I mean, a large amount of alcohol. It can only be a small amount, and that could be changing the demand of the amino acids. You can see there things like arthritis. So inflammation is a cause for extra demand. Chronic diseases is a cause for extra demand. Growth, when children go through growth spurts, that's when they need, when they're going through growth and development, that's when some of these amino acids are absolutely post-surgery. Now you can see some of the signs and symptoms: agitated, memory loss, decreased food and water intake, so no appetite. There's sort of poor hearing. As I said, it becomes essential in adults if there is a demand. But this one, isoleucine, again, almonds, legumes, nuts, pepitas, so pumpkin seeds. The demand, there's a higher demand if they are an athlete. And we'll talk a little bit about protein powders a little later, but just briefly, because otherwise it's a whole other webinar and Martin's going to stop rambling. But isoleucine, almonds, legumes, nuts, pepitas, you can see there's already a trend happening here. Legumes, 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 whole grains, whole grains, whole grains, nuts and seeds, nuts and seeds, nuts and seeds. But the good player here also is a banana. A banana is great. So just remember that as well. But here, higher demand if someone has liver disease. For preterm babies, so, you know, your premature babies, they have a higher demand of this. And they're, you know, especially if they're past breastfeeding or still breastfeeding and they're going on to solids, then is the time to start introducing some of these things. Your renal patient as well, so those with kidney issues. And deficiency can lead to poor growth, fatigue, there's that thing, fatigue, twitching, tremors, depression, irritability. So here you can see there's starting to come in that central nervous system aspect to the amino acids, which make them, again, crucial for good mental health. Yeah. There is food for thought, or studies that say have a tiny piece of protein within 20 minutes of waking and you are setting yourself up for a good day. Moving on to leucine, again, almonds, cashews, nuts, seeds, beans, corn is a nice one there that's been thrown in as an extra, but there's your legumes and there's your whole wheat. The demand more so for infants, for people that have bad gut. So try and fix their gut first and then, you know, make sure that they're getting the right type of amino acids. Again, liver disease. So, you know, the liver plays a huge role. Love your liver. Growth spurts during adolescence. This is where there is a higher demand. You know, people that have had trauma and then have sepsis. The deficiency, again, poor growth. So, and they might appear to be hypoglycemic. So a bit of dizziness. They might get fatigued quite easily or get really bad headaches. Lysine. Now, lysine, there's a little saying that lysine and arginine sort of placate each other, or they don't placate each other, they antidote each other. So lysine's also a big player for herpes simplex. And if you get cold sores, lysine is something that you need to increase when you're having an outbreak, but use otherwise the lysine and they combat with each other and they sort of have a bit of a biff. So you don't want to be having them both at the same time because your herpes will stay for longer. And we'll go through what is in arginine because it's one of your complementary amino acids. So there's a higher demand if you are exercising excessively, if there's hypothyroid. So again, if we look at it from this perspective, think inflammation, think infections, think endocrine. If you have a low protein diet, you know, and a lot of people think that protein puts on weight. You know, we put on weight because potentially the main reason is there could be hormones out of balance or there could be not enough energy out. So they're the main players for that one. Deficiency for lysine, you could see anemia, and you could see that also with B12, and you could see that also with iron. Decreased growth, again, there's your vertigo, so your dizziness, anorexia, so loss of appetite, loss of body weight, and you can see there loss of bone calcium. So lysine also is a player with your healthy bone structure. Sperm motility for those wanting to conceive. So you can see where it's also linked to the reproductive system. Nausea, poor immune. Methionine, your allium vegetables. Now, what do I mean by those? These are your onions, your garlics, your leeks. You know, it's time for potato and leek soup. You know, we're in winter now. So your alliums, the onion family, beans and yogurt. Now I've put yogurt there, even though it's, you know, it's not potentially, it's a dairy food, but your coconut yogurt and your soy yogurt are vegan friendly. The higher demand, again, if you drink alcohol, if you are someone that has celiacs, you might have gut concerns, you might be exposed to chemicals. So you might be, you know, a farmer on a farm who's getting exposed to chemicals, or you might be, you know, like my husband who picks fruit and picks grapes. So he's exposed to chemicals are in its own self. Vitamin B6 deficiency and kidney failure. Now, the deficiency for this one then becomes plaque buildup in the heart, becomes anorexia, so loss of appetite and poor immunity. So heart health is now involved. So we've talked about reproduction, we've talked about immune, we've talked about mental health, so the central nervous system, we've talked about circulation, so we've talked about blood. So you can see that these amino acids are involved in each and every one of the body systems so far. Phenylalanine, this is one of your big players because this is your happy hormones one. So this one helps with dopamine and norepinephrine. And these are your neurotransmitters. Now, neurotransmitters, again, are a webinar in their own right. And maybe Martin will let me do one first. Switch on health later on, but discuss, because mental health is one of the biggest things that I focus on. So that's why I really try to, you know, emphasize the importance of the amino acids. So your phenylalanine, here we go. Our avocado has arrived. So lovely avocado, bananas, almonds, brown rice, again, lentils, soy. So there's your legumes, your nuts and seeds with your almonds and your pistachios. You know, you don't often see pistachios around, but they are quite lovely and quite delicious and quite pretty and green. So, you know, all of these plant-based foods are vital if you wish to have a plant-based diet, because they give you those essential amino acids. There is a higher demand if there's heart health issues. There's also deficiencies. So if there's a deficiency in phenylalanine, we're going to start to see behavioural changes. And they might have bloodshot eyes. You might find that these are the people that go, oh, I've always got red eyes, always. Cataracts is also a player for this one. And as it says there, dopamine, norepinephrine. Threonine, lentils, whole grains. Now, whole grains are only low. So this is why I have added in dairy and eggs. This is the lacto-ovo. And possibly seafood for the pescetarians. The demand for this is if you are on steroids, and a lot of people are on steroids these days, guys. A huge amount of people take steroids, you know, for pain and pain relief. And if they're not getting the right amino acids, then they're actually doing themselves an injustice, because you can see here, you know, they can get confused, they can be emotionally agitated, they can have no appetite because of the anorexia that they're experiencing, they can have severe depression, digestive issues, a fatty liver. The demand is increased if there's not good malabsorption. If there's, you know, again, vegetarians, we've got to be careful here to make sure that we get it in the right ratios as well. And if they're on epileptic drugs. Tryptophan, I'm sure we've all heard about tryptophan, you know, for those that have been or still are omnivores. Turkey at Christmas, that's why you get tired from the tryptophan. This one's a big player for the other, one of the other happy hormones, which is serotonin. And it's also a big player for melatonin, which helps with sleep. So, you know, some of you will know me already. You know, I've been saying this for many, many years. One hormone out, other hormones are out. So tryptophan, there's your bananas again. There's your beans, legumes, whole oats. You know, make sure that their whole grains are whole oats, seeds. I don't know too many people that are going to eat uncooked rice though, but you know, who knows? Maybe we can make some rice milk out of it instead from the uncooked rice. Another one is walnuts, which I didn't have down there as well. I think we've covered most of the nuts so far. You can see there with the demand is if the patient presents as aggressive. You know, it might be a teenager, it might be a kid who's got ADHD and they're showing signs of aggression. It might be something as simple as tryptophan that they need to help themselves with. Again, insomnia, if you get sweet cravings, it could be due to, you know, or if you get sweet cravings, it could be due to a lack of tryptophan. Rheumatoid arthritis and depression. So you can see there, anxiety, depression because of the low serotonin. They'll have low niacin, so low B3 as well, because tryptophan is one of the synergists. It's really important to know your synergists, you know, the cofactors that work with all the other nutrients in order for it to absorb correctly. You can also see that there's suicidal ideation here. And again, 5-HTP is the actual supplement that you can actually get. Valine, again, almonds, chickpeas, lentils, lima beans, mushrooms, nuts, you know, we all know them, we all use them. It's whether or not we actually do place them in the right combination though. The demand is higher for valine when there's cancer or where there's some sort of muscle wasting disease. And the deficiency can be, you know, there might be facial nerve degeneration. So they might have some Bell's palsy where they're, you know, half their face is slightly paralyzed or some sort of palsy. Fatigue when exercising. Now, this is a big one. If you get fatigued when you're exercising, then it could be something as simple as your amino acids. So having a smoothie or a handful of nuts before you exercise might be enough to get you through a big spin class, you know, or through a big step class or whatever. So think about it that way. Again, fatty liver. Now, I'm not going to go through these, every one of these. I'm just going to go through them briefly. I'm not going to go through all the foods that are in them because they're there. You get the slides. But these are what we call conditional essential amino acids. So if your body is out of balance or diseased, these amino acids are going to become essential. And then therefore, the body's no longer making them. So they need to be found in food. So there's that arginine, plays havoc with your lysine. Okay, again, stress is a big player here. Injury, infection, you know, you can see there delayed puberty just because they're not having arginine in their diet, or they might be, you know, high school students, you know, the last 2 years, there's been a fair bit of stress on. So the high school students are on high stress, and this could then therefore delay their puberty, you know. Gut infections, infertility, you know, people trying to conceive, again, moments of high stress. You can't conceive if your body is stressed. Skin rashes, you can see that. Cysteine, glutamine, glycine, each one of those have their own components there, but you can see there's the allium family again, the garlic, the brewer's yeast, the legumes, the nuts, the seeds, the beans. We love it, we love it, we love it. So deficiency, you know, poor sleep patterns if you don't get enough glycine, depression if there's not enough glutamine. Age, you're going to age fairly quickly if there's not enough cysteine, or have poor wound healings or psychosis. So, you know, they are still big players if the demand on the body causes them to become essential. Again, histidine, we talked about that prior. Proline, again, beans, wheat germ. This one here, you might see back pain, you might see osteoarthritis, wear and tear, you might see increased LDLs, so, you know, the bad cholesterol. With serine, again, wheat germ, beans, legumes. This one's a big one though for if there's a deficiency in children. I don't know too many children that are going to be on corticosteroids, but these are little ones that might show with a smaller head when they were born, or they might have difficulties feeding because they might have a hair lip, or they might have seizures when they were born. So you can see here how essential, and even the conditional non-essential ones, amino acids are. Taurine, now taurine's a big player. I've talked about taurine for many years now, especially with included with magnesium. This is one of the only amino acids that are not found in vegetables. So we do need to potentially supplement here if we find that the body is under demand. So if they're an epileptic, if they're got hypertension, if they're, you know, going through formula feeding, if they're nursing mothers, or if they've been on the oral contraceptive pill, these could be higher demand for taurine. You may need to supplement. It's one of the very few that you may need to supplement with though. And then tyrosine, again, avocados, bananas, beans, and nuts and seeds. So your amino acids, look, they're the difference between good health and bad health, I personally believe, especially from a mental health perspective, especially from a holistic perspective, for you to feel good and to feel that your neurotransmitters and all those hormones, those happy hormones are going well, then these amino acids are huge players for not only omnivores, but even huger for vegans, because a lot of vegans don't necessarily get the right ratios, and we'll discuss what we mean by that now. So what is protein combining? Okay, a complete protein is a protein that has all the essential amino acids, and there are quite a few vegetarian versions. You know, quinoa would be one of them. And most of the plant-based proteins, although they are complete, as it says there, they may be low in one or two. You know, they may be low in one or two of those amino acids. Now, protein combining, there used to be a belief where you had to combine your proteins with every meal, right? In order for you to get all the essential amino acids. That's since been changed. Yes, you need your complete proteins. Yes, you need to be, you know, more aware if you are using plant-based proteins. And the reason being is because of the fact that some of them might be lower in, you know, tryptophan, or they might be lower in serine, or they might be lower in histidine. And so therefore we need to complement it with something else. So it says there, vegans in particular need to complement their proteins together in the course of a day though. So what happens with your amino acids is that they get stored and utilized as we need them. So it used to be that we'd have to do this for every meal. Now, studies have shown that we need to do this within the course of a day though. So what does that mean? So this gives us a complete amino acid profile. And what that means is we need to consume it in the right way in a meal or throughout the course of the day. So these are legumes and whole grains together, or legumes and nuts and seeds together. Yeah. Throughout the course of the day, we need to have legumes. Throughout the course of the day, in order to get the right amino acids, we also need to include whole grains, nuts and seeds. Now, I also added in there, for those that might be lactarians, is whole grains and dairy. All right. Now, what does that look like? So here we have some breakfast ideas. First one is smoothies. Chia seeds, high in protein, high in omegas, high as far as fiber is concerned. Oats, fiber, some amino acids, as you saw in those previous slides. Your nut butters, your nut milks, or your soya milk. Now, just with soy milk though, be aware of which soy milk you buy. The reason being is the more processed it is, it can become, rather than phyto estrogenic, it can become what's called xenoestrogenic, which means that it's working against you in your reproductive hormones, especially for women, but also for men. Muesli, nuts and seeds in a nut milk. Lunch. Now, I'm also an advocate of a big breakfast and a small dinner. And some of you have already heard me say this over the years: a breakfast of kings, a lunch of princes, and a dinner of paupers. So your main meal becomes breakfast, then the next main meal is lunch. That gives you the energy to get through the day. Okay, so you know the last meal we have should be a little meal, not a huge meal, because we're getting ready for bed. All right, just putting it out there, planting a seed. So breakfast, I've still done typical breakfasts, but I would happily have a pumpkin curry with lentils and brown rice for breakfast, and I've been known to do so. You know, a ratatouille with brown rice and maybe some nuts and seeds. But you can see there, tofu, brown rice, noodles, stir fries. Even a nut butter sandwich with sprouts might be better than your breakfast smoothie, depending on if it's going to get you through, and if you've got a stressful day or a big day ahead, you might want to make that breakfast, you know, instead of a piece of fruit and a little tiny tub of yogurt, which I'm sure a lot of people do, you need to make it a bit bigger. So I'm just planting that seed one more time. Dinner soups. So you've got your veggie soups, add some split peas, add some whole barley, sprinkle it with seeds. You've got your veggie patty burgers, your snacks. Again, you've got your veggie sticks, you've got your hummus, you've got your whole grain crackers. You've then got nuts and seeds that you can sprinkle over your yogurt. You can add fruit and veg in everything and anything these days. You know, your spinach, even though it's seen as savory, goes into a sweet smoothie with strawberries. So you can add your veggies in everywhere, your fruits in everywhere. As long as you've got those whole grains, and I mean whole grains, and nuts and seeds, you're doing okay. Now, the nuts and seeds obviously need to be raw. We're not talking salted, roasted here. If you're going to roast them off yourself. But again, you know, it's all about potentially soaking, sprouting, and fermenting as well. So sauces to add in some veggies. I've just put a few there: pesto, mushrooms, Alfredo, Napolitana. So they're all there. And there is these days so many magical recipes out there, guys. And I've given you some fabulous sort of, you know, podcasts and things a little further on, which we'll go through. Here are a few websites that's going to further discuss protein combining for you. There's one from Edible San Francisco, there's one from the Medical Journal of Australia, and there's one from the Vegan Australian Organisation. Each say very similar things, but some of them have some examples of some of those amino acids that are missing in your that are missing in some of the complete proteins, you know, that they might be lower than normal. Because you still need to get your RDIs of most of these amino acids as well. Fabulous pictures, colour, colour, colour. So we also need to talk a little bit about the types of plant foods that are available. Organic fruit and veg are still expensive, but organic fruit and veg are becoming less expensive because of supply and demand. All right, now, as it says there, organic, no need to be certified. So in Australia, by law, organic farmers do not need to say that they are 100% organic. Okay, they do not need to be certified. This is not, there's no accountability here. So some people may say that they are organic and yet they still use some pesticides, okay? There are voluntary standards for the growers here in Australia. So 100% organic, made using organic ingredients, certified organic, may not necessarily be the truth. So it's about getting a relationship with, going to the farmers markets, going to the organic markets, going to the health food stores that sell organic foods, going to even the supermarket and asking the supermarket, where do they source their organic fruit and veg from? Yeah. Businesses must be able to substantiate their claims though. So even though they're not certified, even though they're not by law having to prove things, if someone decides that they want to investigate, they can investigate further. Biodynamic, a little bit different to organic. It just means ethical farming. So these are your happy animals roaming around. These are, well-nurtured fruit and veg. All right. And there's a link there to Biodynamic Australia. There is called the National Standard for Organic and Biodynamic Produce, but it is owned by the Department of Agriculture. So it is a government body. It's only mandatory for exported organic produce to prove that they're 100% organic. But there is, you can go there and find out a little bit more if you so choose to. There is also the Australian Certified Organic Association, and they too can give you some information on organics. The biggest thing that I find with organics is try and get your staples, buy your staples organically, your onions, your garlic, your maybe your bananas. Certainly try and buy, if you can afford it. And I know we're coming into a very difficult time ahead, but organic berries are certainly better than normal berries. The only reason why I say that is because berries have such a tiny thin skin. Think of a strawberry, think of a blueberry, think of a blackberry or a mulberry. They have a very thin skin. And so therefore the chemicals can actually permeate into the flesh. Same for your stone fruits as well. Try and get them organic too if you can. And certainly your lettuces and your spinaches, and some of your green leafies. Because the toxic overload for chemicals is potentially as bad as anything else. You can see that some of the pesticides were affecting some of those amino acids. So just think about that as well. Labels, a labeling talk on Thursday, so we'll talk about how to read those and what is, it should state what is organic. It should state in the ingredients which ingredients are organic. Maybe not all of the ingredients are organic as well, so you need to be aware of that with the processed foods and what is not organic. Sustainable foods, so your sustainable foods, this is where there's crop rotation. And it's based on the crops grown seasonally, only in season. We've become this sort of, community, this society where we have to have things all year round. We've totally come away from seasonal foods. The one thing that I find about traveling around Australia for the past 5 years in the caravan, the way I do, is that Tony and I only eat seasonally now. We only eat what's in season because we find that that's the most tasty. Try some of the foods that are out of season, and you might not find that they're as nourishing as you thought they were. So sustainable, in between the crops, what they do is they plant a plant that puts minerals back into the soil. There is the National Farmers Federation where you can go to find out about sustainability and sustainability initiatives as well, especially if you want to find out some information about if you want to find some information about how to do your own herb beds and things like that, or do your own veggies. Everybody's now starting to grow their own vegetables, which is fabulous. So this will give you some more sort of initiatives towards that. And the most recent one, and one of the best ones, I've got a mate in South Australia down at Victor Harbour who has a regenerated farm, and we've been there, we've stayed there. We stayed there for a good 5 months back in 2020, and the food that we were eating, it tasted like food. it was absolutely magnificent. I've never seen such green spinach or such green lettuces. I had never seen, and the lettuces just didn't taste watery. They actually had a taste to them. And being the big foodie that I am, it was just magnificent to have these regenerated crops where it's all about the soil, and it's all about the microbiome, and it's all about the insects that we require in order to make that food really good. And it's also about, so they encourage different insects to come in, even dung beetles to come in, because they've got a couple of sheep. The sheep, nurture the ground, they poop in the ground, the dung beetles clear the ground, they then add their little bit into it, and you've got all this fabulous bacteria, and then you've got all these fabulous nourishing herbs and things and vegetables. So look at regeneration, support some of these farmers. If you start supporting all these people, then things will change. But we need to have the demand to do that. Otherwise, the supermarkets are just going to keep playing us the way they always have been. So, it's up to us to stand up and be accounted for. And we've been trying to do that for the past couple of years, I'm sure. And now it's time for change. And good change is coming, I know. If you find that a vegan diet, or that, removing everything from your diet is too much for you to handle, the one lifestyle diet that I would recommend would be the Mediterranean diet. It is a whole food diet. It has minimal, if any, processed foods. Its emphasis, as it says there, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, healthy fats, healthy oils. There's fish and seafood that is consumed instead of red, white meat and fowl, or dairy. There's emphasis on herbs and spices and the allium family to flavour things. It certainly is about reducing the intake of white, red meats, fowl, and dairy, and being mindful about what we're eating, and being mindful about who we're eating with. Not sitting in front of the telly to eat and all those sorts of things. There is, if you Google Mediterranean Diet Australia, Queensland Health has a pretty good PDF that certainly talks in more detail about the Mediterranean diet. Here is the pyramid here. As you can see at the very top, at that very top of the pyramid, less often, meats and sweets, weekly. So in moderation, poultry, eggs, weekly. Your fish twice a week. And then every day, it's all about veggies, whole grains, legumes, spices. And then to finish off with, your energy out, a little bit of walking, maybe some dancing, do some gardening, get your veggies growing, sit down with your family. We're in hard times at the moment, and now is the time to be very aware of who we are and what we eat, and in moderation, as it says there, a glass of red wine. I'm sure Martin's going, yes, I need my antioxidants, Sally. And obviously your dark chocolate, but only one sliver, one glass, and then your water. This is what a Mediterranean diet looks like. You can see some sardines there and some cheese. Everything else is pretty much what a vegan would eat anyway. Some of the blogs that I've found, these are mostly Australian. One of them is called The Minimalist Vegan. And they specify on cooking videos. They've got really good cooking videos and vegan recipes. There's whole food plant-based recipes from Simply Health by vegan. So these are directory for plant-based products, both food and non-food. Rainbow Nourishment. Now, when I read this, the young lady's blog, it just sounded delightful because she loves ice cream. And so she does some really good, from what I can gather, desserts and ice cream recipes. There's Vegan Style, which is about fashions for vegans. Vegan Australia, again, now Vegan Australia is more of a political party. It talks about vegans, but also animal rights news. Veggie Full, now they're specialised predominantly in families, kids, babies. This one's a great one as well, Olive Wood from Paddock to Plate. World Vegan Guide, so where you can buy your vegan foods globally. Here's the link to 30 of the best Australian ones. Now, it covers everything, these blogs. It covers vegan foods, gluten-free foods, dairy-free, nut-free, refined sugar-free, palm oil-free. There's breakfast, there's main meals, there's desserts, including chocolate, Martin. There's side dishes, superfoods, raw foods. Ostomy foods is for those people that might have a colostomy bag, okay, and they need good nourishment. But it also talks about how to organize foods for someone with a colostomy bag. Seasonal and holiday eating, eating out, eating in different restaurants in different cities. You know, I know that Adelaide's covered, Sydney and Melbourne are covered. Brand names of good vegan foods. Vegan foods to eat when traveling. And then there's the non-vegan products. So you've got your beauty cosmetics, your clothes, your furnishings. And then it talks about sustainable living, ethical living. You've also got some of these blogs also talk about the campaigns that they're doing in the politics, if you wish to go into that as well. Talks about minimalism, food, nutrition, and CBD, so your medical marijuana. And then there is even a blog of meals that someone has eaten that are completely vegan. So yeah, I think there's some fabulous information out there these days for vegans and for, you know, basically becoming a plant-based eater. Martin, I'm done.
Very good, Sally.
Hopefully you're there.
Big round of applause for Sally, everyone. And she finished on time as well, despite me being incredibly skeptical about her ability to get through all of those slides.
Talk underwater, Martin, and talk really quickly.
I know it. So listen, if you're watching a live version, please do stick around. We'll be very, very happy to answer your questions and to have a chat with you. If you are watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. Do put any questions or comments you've got in the box below, or visit our website, get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Now, where's the record button? There it is. So yep, thank you so much for coming. Stick around if you're here live. Otherwise, learn more with Switch On Health.